Hey there, my name is James Lee. Welcome to another segment of 5149 on Breaking Points, where we dive into different topics at the intersection of business, politics, and society. And today, we're going to talk about the homeless industrial complex.
The homeless crisis in America is worsening again. The COVID pandemic caused a surge in housing costs and a rise in unemployment, leaving nearly 600,000 Americans unhoused in 2020. Cities across America are spending more than ever to combat the crisis. In 2019, New York spent a record-breaking $3 billion to support its homeless population. California is also expected to break its record, allocating $4.8 billion of its budget to the same issue over the next 2 years.
And areas like that just don't seem to be getting any better, despite the fact that every politician claims that this is a top priority of theirs and the budgets keep going up.
On the contrary, 2020 saw a 30% increase in the unsheltered homeless, erasing over half a decade of work since its dramatic rise in 2015.
Yep, if you live in an urban area, you've probably noticed the homeless problem getting worse. Everybody has seen this, I think, to some degree. And thus, we have dedicated more public funding and attention towards solving homelessness in the U.S. than ever before. But for some reason, the homeless epidemic continues to grow. Let's look at one example, San Francisco. This graphic is from the SF Department of Public Health. The budget allocated to combat the homeless crisis in the city has increased every year, but the SF homeless population has also been increasing in lockstep every year for the past half decade. How could this be? Now, there are a lot of factors that contribute to increased rates of homelessness in America, and today's segment covers only one small sliver of that discourse, one that I think is less often discussed because it brings to light the uncomfortable premise that maybe some of the people in charge of solving homelessness don't actually want to solve it at all.
Turning now to the homeless crisis, the governor just announced almost $700 million in funding to convert more apartment buildings and vacant hotels into housing for the homeless.
The old mattress move, never easy.
Governor Gavin Newsom with volunteers helping set up a new Project Home Key apartment. The space will become a home for someone living on the streets.
Why can't we buy more buildings and get people off the streets today? Get buildings where we can help people ever avoid hitting the streets. That's where Project Home Key was born.
Project Home Key uses funding to convert buildings like this or motels and hotels into interim or permanent housing for the homeless.
$700 million for Project Home Key in California, which is a program that sprang from a strategy to combat homelessness called Housing First, where the goal is to get every homeless person into a permanent home without any kind of pre-qualifications like sobriety, drug treatment, or psychiatric care. Now, I'm not an expert in social work, so I don't know what the most effective way is to get people off the streets. I do know that the causes are multifaceted. Obviously, there's a financial component, but there's also substance abuse to consider and maybe a cultural factor as well. But what I can comment on is that with the amount of money flowing, for example, in California, Governor Newsom has approved grants for nearly $1 billion over the past 2 years, $1 billion this year, and another $1 billion next year through the state's Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Program to all cities and counties in the state. That is a lot of money, $1 billion a year, which I would guess is going to be a lot of opportunity for misuse. Misuse by who? What am I talking about here? Let's take a look at the eligibility for the program. Cities, counties, or other local public entities, including housing authorities or federally recognized tribal governments within California, may apply independently as a development sponsor. Alternatively, a local public entity may apply jointly with a nonprofit or for-profit corporation. That is important to take note of. The Home Key program is designed as a public-private partnership. An important truth to remember is that private sector corporations aren't in the business to address societal problems. They are in the business to maximize profits, which unfortunately is fundamentally, I think, incompatible with something like providing universal affordable housing. And here's an example of what happens all the time in public-private partnerships. A real estate broker, Jim Neal, who was hired by the San Diego Housing Commission, bought 40,000 shares of stock of Chatham Lodging Trust, the former corporate owner of a Mission Valley hotel, before negotiating a $67 million deal for the Housing Commission to purchase the 192-unit property, which works out to about $349,000 per room, which is the highest per room cost for any hotel sold in the county last year, according to the San Diego Union Tribune. Neal also allegedly breached their broker agreement with the Housing Commission when he earned commissions totaling over $1 million on his deals with the cities last year, according to the city attorney's office, and now he's being sued by the city. You see, developers, brokers, government bureaucrats, nonprofit executives, they all see dollar signs. They see this opportunity to not necessarily fix homelessness, but to profit from it.
City leaders, including Sacramento's Mayor Darrell Steinberg, are in a meeting right now with Governor Gavin Newsom discussing the local homeless funding he withheld until they came up with a better plan to address the crisis.
Yeah, the governor said combined the plans would only reduce homelessness by 2% over the next 2 years.
Governor Gavin Newsom walked into the meeting Friday afternoon hoping for cities to come up with a better way to address the state's homeless crisis. San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria said he welcomes a collaboration of ideas, but not like this.
Even a short pause means that we have to pause our own efforts because we don't have the certainty of the funding being available. We have an expectation that the state make these funds permanent and ongoing.
Permanent and ongoing. That's literally what some of these people are looking for. Blank checks in perpetuity for a cause that's worthy, but also a cause they are willing to milk, of course. Since we heard from Todd Gloria, Mayor of San Diego, let's take a look at what's happening in San Diego. In September, the city was awarded $37.7 million from California's Home Key program. On March 22nd, 2021, San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria boasted that Home Key temporarily housed 330 people, which is $114,000 per person. I don't think I'm going out on much of a limb by saying that. I don't think he's spending that money very wisely. I mean, $37 million for 330 people, which is kind of comical, right? I mean, you heard it earlier, $1 billion, right, to be doled out to every county and the largest cities in the state of California. And the current plans as submitted by the cities would only reduce homelessness by 2% statewide over 4 years. Even Gavin Newsom is not too happy about it. He temporarily halted the $1 billion in an effort to demand better plans from the cities and counties. But the problem is he's kind of thrown in his lot with Project Home Key. In the state of California, there's something called a behested payment. Basically, public officials may call individuals or companies with business before the state and ask them to donate to any governmental or charitable purpose. And there's no limit to these types of contributions. Now, it was reported that Newsom racked up an unprecedented $226 million in behested payments in 2020, mostly for purposes related to his administration's COVID-19 pandemic response and messaging. For example, Facebook was behested out of $2.1 million, which included over $1 million of ad credits and $650,000 to support Project Home Key, an effort to buy hotels and convert them to housing for the homeless. Very interesting. He's got not only his political capital tied up in the project, but also financial capital as well, right? He kind of has to be all in. And California is not unique. These types of situations, abuses happen all over the country. The New York Times recently ran an expose about Jack Brown, a nonprofit executive who operates New York City homeless shelters, who has siphoned off millions from the people who he's supposed to be serving. Since 2017, the city has awarded more than $352 million to CORE, a nonprofit run by Mr. Brown to operate shelters. From that funding, we're talking about him taking more than $1 million in salary per year. We're also talking about him using his nonprofit to channel contracts worth at least $32 million into for-profit companies that he has a financial interest in. We're talking about millions more going to real estate companies in which he has an ownership interest in. And to top it off, he's also hired his family members and given employees perks such as gym memberships and cars. You cannot convince me that he actually cares about ending homelessness, because if he does, by chance, all his financial investments go poof. And that is the homeless industrial complex in a nutshell. You have the politicians who are funding programs that, in theory, help promote solutions to a widespread problem, in this case, homelessness. But like any other industrial complex, you also have nonprofit executives, real estate developers, government bureaucrats, and many others who have hijacked the original cause and turned it into a profit machine. There is something called Pornell's iron law of bureaucracy, which states that in any bureaucratic organization, there will be two kinds of people: those who work to further the actual goals of the organization and those who work for the organization itself. The iron law states that in all cases, the second type of person will always gain control of the organization and will always write the rules under which the organization functions. Okay, so in this case, you have the hardworking social workers on the street trying to help make a difference, but you also have your Jack Browns of the world, the people who run the organizations, the people whose interests are not tied to the success of the organization in terms of the causes they serve, but rather the financial success of the organization itself. All right, I'm going to end with something that is uncomfortable and potentially unpopular. I read somewhere that homelessness is both a result of and an impediment to the pursuit of economic growth. Basically, homelessness is, in our country, a feature and not a bug. You see, you need it to exist as a stick to keep people working, and the lack thereof of homelessness is kind of a moral hazard for our economic system. And to me, that is the point. We either choose to have homelessness or we don't. Throwing billions of dollars at the problem is kind of like treating the symptom without fully understanding the cause. It only serves to enrich folks who are not in the business of solving problems, but rather in the business of milking every ounce of profit until the well runs dry. That's all from me this time. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion about the homeless industrial complex. If you did, I would encourage you to check out my YouTube channel, 5149 with James Lee. I have tons of videos and breakdowns on different topics. Many of them like this one. The link will be in the description below. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to Breaking Points, and thank you so much for your time today.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.